So, are you ready to dive into this new Delta Force game? Everyone's saying it's going to be huge GE, maybe even take down Call of Duty, and we've got some juicy detail.
Yeah, the hype is real, but we like to go beyond the buzz.
Absolutely. And today we're looking at one gamer's experience with the alpha. And get this, the guy racked up 50 hours in-game.
50 hours, wow. That's dedication, not just a quick first impression. This guy means business.
Exactly. And he's calling it a healthy game, which immediately caught my attention. What do you think he means by that?
Healthy. It's a loaded term for sure, especially these days. I think for a lot of gamers, it boils down to a few things. Servers, first and foremost.
Oh, for sure. Nobody wants to be stuck with lag or crashes.
Exactly. And he specifically said the servers were great. But beyond that, healthy also suggests balance.
Balance in terms of gameplay.
Yeah, like fair mechanics, no crazy pay-to-win nonsense. Basically, is this a game designed to be fun and rewarding, or is it all about squeezing money out of players? And from what we're hearing, it sounds like Delta Force is leaning towards the former.
Which makes his opinion even more valuable, right? I mean, this isn't some paid influencer with a hidden agenda. This is a player who genuinely seems to be enjoying his time.
Definitely. 50 hours in, and he's still singing its praises. That speaks volumes.
And one thing that really jumped out at me was his emphasis on the game's smoothness. He mentions it over and over again, like he hasn't experienced anything like it.
Smoothness, especially in a shooter, that's gold. We're talking responsiveness, right? The way your actions translate directly onto the screen without delay. That split-second timing can make or break you in a firefight.
So this could be a game changer for competitive players, especially since he also mentioned the absence of skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, which has been a hot topic lately. Can you break down for us why that matters so much?
Sure. SBMM is basically a system that tries to match you with players of similar skill levels. In theory, it sounds fair.
Right. Everyone's on an even playing field.
Right. But in practice, it can often feel like you're trapped in this endless loop of sweaty matches. Like you can never just relax and enjoy a casual game. You're always fighting tooth and nail, which can be exhausting.
Yeah, I can see that. So it sounds like Delta Force is taking a different approach, more focused on pure skill-based gameplay. If you're good, you'll climb the ranks. If not, well, you better practice.
Exactly. And that ties into another interesting point the gamer brought up. The movement system in Delta Force is apparently very unique, and he even speculates that it could be one of the main things that sets it apart from games like Call of Duty.
Why is movement so crucial in a shooter? I mean, I get that it's how you get around the map, but how much of an impact can it really have on the gameplay?
You'd be surprised. A well-designed movement system can completely change the feel of a shooter. It dictates the flow of combat, the strategies you could employ, even the way you perceive the map. Take Titanfall 2, for example. Remember that game, the wall running, the double jumps? It was exhilarating.
Yeah, a totally different vibe from something like Call of Duty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And from the sounds of it, Delta Force is trying to do something unique with its movement system, something that will hopefully set it apart from the crowd and offer a fresh experience.
Okay, we've talked about how this new Delta Force feels, but what about when we can actually get our hands on it? I know I'm not the only one dying to know the release date.
Well, you're in luck. Our guy actually had some insider info on that. Early access drops on October 14th.
October 14th, so soon. Although I think he said that's just for PC, right?
That's right. Seems like PC gets first dibs, which makes sense. Delta Force has a long history on PC. But don't worry, mobile's getting an alpha test later this year and then full release on both mobile and console Q1 2025.
Simultaneous launch. They're really taking a page out of Call of Duty's playbook, huh?
Yeah, looks like it. Even down to the shared progression across platforms. Good news if you like to switch between, PC and your phone or whatever you play on.
Definitely. And speaking of timelines, he also mentioned a story mode coming out, but not until Q1 2025. That seems kind of late, doesn't it? Especially if they're banking on multiplayer to be the main draw at launch.
Could be a strategic move, actually. They hook us with this awesome multiplayer, build up a solid player base, and then, bam, story mode drops. Keeps people hyped and coming back for more. Plus, it buys them time to really polish that single-player experience. And speaking of keeping things fresh, remember how we talked about trends? Escape from Tarkov. Anyone.
Oh, you mean that hardcore, super realistic shooter everyone's obsessed with?
That's the one. Well, Delta Force is getting its own version of that in mid-2025. Day-night cycles, multiple maps, the whole shebang.
Wow, that's a bold move. Definitely not shying away from the competition. But with all this talk about multiplayer, gotta ask the big question, right? Cheaters. Did our gamer friends say anything about how Delta Force plans to combat those?
Not in detail, no. But there were a few tidbits. For one, they're pushing hardware bans pretty hard.
Which, for those who don't know, is a lot more serious than just getting your account banned.
Oh yeah, way more serious.
Yeah.
We're talking about blacklisting specific parts of your computer. So even if you create a new account, if you're on the same hardware, you're toast. At least that's the idea.
Sounds effective, but I imagine it's not foolproof. Cheaters always seem to find a way.
True. It all comes down to implementation and how proactive the developers are. They've got to be on their toes,
Yeah.
constantly updating their anti-cheat.
Makes sense. Can't just set it and forget it. He did mention a kill cam for suspicious players, though, right? That seems like a step in the right direction.
It is. Basically, players can review deaths from the killer's perspective, help spot those fishy moments like aimbotting or wall hacks, and report them directly.
So, a way to empower the community to help police itself.
Precisely. Of course, that relies on people actually reporting what they see, and even more importantly, the developers actually taking action based on those reports.
Good point. A system is only as good as the people running it. On a brighter note, though, it does sound like they're taking content updates seriously. New weapons, operators, all that jazz.
Yeah, which is crucial these days, especially with games like, Call of Duty, just setting the bar so high. Got to keep things fresh or players will jump ship. And based on what we've heard, it sounds like Delta Force is ready to deliver on that front.
So, we've covered a lot of ground, from smooth gameplay to hardcore modes. But to really be a Call of Duty killer, Delta Force needs that special something, right? Something truly innovative. Did our gamer friend mention anything like that?
There were a couple things that piqued his interest, and mine too, now that I've heard about it. He kept mentioning this vision mechanic, but it was kind of vague.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Made it sound like enemies would light up or something.
Right, like maybe a thermal vision thing, but he wasn't clear on how you activate it, if it's tied to specific gear or anything like that. More of a tease than anything, which, gets the hype train rolling.
Definitely makes you want to see it in action. Then there was that whole Gunsmith 2.0 thing he was gushing about. Sounds like they're going all out on weapon customization.
Yeah, he was talking loadouts, different camo patterns, even color schemes that change based on what attachments you use. Pretty wild stuff, if it lives up to the hype.
Some people might hear that and be like, okay, so what? It's just cosmetics. But I know for a lot of gamers, customization is a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about personalization, right? Making your soldier, your weapons feel uniquely yours. It's that extra level of connection that can really hook you into a game. And the tech behind color shifting attachments, that's not entirely new, but it's never been done quite like this, apparently.
Sounds like they're pushing the boundaries, which is always exciting. But, beyond all the tech specs and fancy features, the thing that really stuck with me was how much this gamer emphasized the feel of Delta Force.
Yeah, he kept saying it just feels right, which is something you can't really quantify, but you know it when you experience it.
Exactly. And it's something that so many shooters struggle with, finding that sweet spot between realism and arcade-style action.
It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Yeah.
Too realistic, and it becomes a chore for the average player. Too arcadey, and it loses that tactical edge. Sounds like Delta Force is aiming for that middle ground, and if they nail it, that could be a huge part of their success.
Fingers crossed. Based on everything we've discussed, Delta Force has the potential to be a real game changer. But as always, the real test will be how it plays out in the wild.
Couldn't agree more. Early access is just around the corner, though, so we'll get a taste of what's to come very soon. In the meantime, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on Delta Force? Think it has what it takes to dethrone the reigning champs of the shooter genre? Hit us up in the comments and let us know. And for all things gaming, keep it locked right here on The Deep Dive.